welcome to the making of The Bench.
I'm gonna ask you to look away. I love my hands, but it hurts to brave. The life I have isn't what I'd seen. The sky's not blue and the field's not green. Wait for me. Wait for me. Wait for me.
One night I was sitting watching like top 50 horror films on Channel 4 or something, and it was like showing you scenes from Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I like some horror films, but I was never a big horror film fan. But seeing all these scenes, and there was like Alien and stuff as well, and you don't realise how many good scenes are in horror films. And I was like, oh, I could do a horror film. This would be fun to write. And I think at the time, like torture porn, like Hostel and Saw and stuff like that, were becoming big. So there was that kind of like mixture of the both, like the old slasher films and bringing some of that in, and it just started coming together in my head.
Well, I'd previously worked with Sean on a film called Pawn Life, and it was a really good experience. And I think, obviously, when Sean was looking to do another movie, we ended up kind of collaborating on it, because I think I enjoyed the experience of working on the movie, and I think I helped out a wee bit on Pawn Life with different bits, and it was basically just kind of, I got a right buzz doing it because it was my first kind of project. So when I'd done that, we ended up kind of moving into more of a collaboration, and then decided to kind of work together on it.
So I was sending the script to Chris, and I was sending it to different people that I had in mind, and just getting feedback as we went along, and we were sort of doing like table reads and stuff like that and auditioning. And then I think within maybe like a few months, I went over to Dublin because there was a friend of mine who worked in the industry and stuff like that, and he had been interested in basically going over there to see about finance and see if he would give us the money to help make the film. So I went over with the DVD of Pawn Life, which was my first film, and the script for The Bench, and I was kind of like, right, give us your money. And he agreed after 3 days of drinking. And I got sent home pretty hungover. And then we just sort of started the process of like trying to put that together, get crew, where we were going to film, looking for a cabin, because you need a cabin to make a cabin in the woods film. And everything kind of went well, I think, to begin with. It was a while ago, so I think we got the cast we wanted. We finally found a cabin. We knew where we were filming, we were getting the kit. And then our funding got pulled. The curse of The Bench, really. Like, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Joy McAvoy, who was supposed to play one of the lead females, she was doing a tour with her band, so she couldn't take a part anymore. Ross Maxwell, who plays a smaller part in the film, was supposed to play the lead. He started doing fireman training, he couldn't do it. So all these kind of things came up that kind of pushed us back. During that time, we were keeping ourselves going with like making little sort of proof of concept trailers that took place before or after the film, just as a way of sort of like practicing the look of how it was going to be and seeing how we could shoot something that would be, you can write something and it might seem like it's going to be scary, but how is it going to translate to being on screen? So we were doing that, and then it was roughly probably almost a year later before we actually started production.
Well, we're saying that basically you guys are about to get it, and you're grabbing your bag out when you turn around and go, the door wasn't locked, because by that time we should be in the cabin.
It's youth of doing these projects. I think like you have such amazing, vast, grand ideas when you're doing things like this, and it was putting things together, ideas together, and then not knowing how much hard work it was actually going to be in it. I think we had ideas certainly above our station at some points of some of the stuff that we were kind of thinking to do, but we made 99% of it work, which was a really good thing. But when you're putting things together, and we collaborated on, so we had a weekly meeting, I think, a twice weekly meeting at one point, and we came together and talked about the film, how we're going to do it, different scenes we're going to have in the film, different things that I could do to help, different ways of helping just in general. And it was certainly interesting because we didn't really have an idea of how, at the time, I don't think we had an idea of how many people were going to be on the film set at one point. And like Sean said, it was 28, I think was the amount we ended up having on set, which I think I didn't realise how big it was going to be.
While writing it, I had people in mind for some of the parts. Like Jennifer, who plays Alex, had already been involved in the previous film. Chris, who plays Tommy. Gareth, with his long hair and beard, I just knew instantly that he was going to be Chester. We had Ross Maxwell, and we had, because he'd worked with me before, and Joy. Actually, I think it was something like Jennifer worked in an office with someone who was in the band with Joy, and that's how we kind of got to talking to Joy about it. And she came along and she read for the part. We auditioned loads of people for the role of Lauren, and they were all really good. Like, a lot of them have went on to do quite well in acting, but they just weren't right for the part. And then I think it was Chris, through his contacts with like modelling and stuff like that and different things, had brought in Ilaria, who was a model and who hadn't acted, but she was great, you know, and she did a few auditions just to kind of make sure we got it right, but she was really good. And then we were really stuck for Aidan right up until I think almost filming, and we'd auditioned a few people and no one was really quite right for it, and I think it was like the last kind of minute that we got Matt. We got Matt in, but he was studying movement under his teacher. Basically, was the couple that owned the cabin that we were going to film in, and she recommended him, and he came in and he blew us away in the audition. He was fantastic.
I don't actually remember how the audition process came about, but I do remember auditioning for the bench. It was Chris and Sean who had auditioned me, and I didn't find out till a wee bit later that the part of Aidan had already been cast, but then there was a problem with the actor, or they couldn't do the schedule, so they were in the process of recasting. And yeah, I was just out of drama school. I wanted to do, obviously, my first film, and yeah, I really wanted to get the job. I'd never done a feature before, I'd never done a horror film before, so I really wanted to impress them, and you know, that's what happened. We auditioned, and as Chris said, one time he was just like, yeah, we got our man. It was a very unique filming experience. Let's put it like that. So first of all, which I didn't realise, because I'd never done a horror film before. I've done quite a few horror films already in my career since then, but this was my first. And the thing about a horror film is a lot of that is shot at night. So that was an element that you had to kind of take on board when you were preparing, but also you were shooting in Scotland. So light, weather, it's all very unpredictable.
I remember our original plan was we were gonna, well, it turned out to be the actual way it worked, was let's get a cabin, we're gonna go to the cabin, we're gonna camp out at the cabin. So finding the cabin originally was always going to be a challenge. You know, we looked at you know, a beautiful little lodge on an estate at one point, you know, with a very, very, very well-to-do gentleman who is unfortunately wanted to charge us quite a lot of money. But it would have been a very different film. It would have not had the grungy feel. So what we ended up doing was we ended up shooting in essentially a friend of a friend's shed that we spent a couple of weeks and months kind of converting the first half of it. This was a massive shed. We've converted the first half of it into the living room and one bedroom. And because we did that, we knew we had a set that was ours. We didn't have to be quite so careful about a lot of stuff. And we also knew it very well. And it was also quite accessible because it wasn't too far from where we were staying. It wasn't the same logistical issue of, oh, actually, it's 3 hours north in the Highlands and we need to go to that lodge. As for the actual shoot, we had the crew basically staying within about 50 meters of that shed, all in tents. And it starts off as fun. You've got your catering on site, you've got your portaloo that's been hired on site, you've got your, you know, we've basically got people kind of coming in and out all day, and you're on set for the whole thing. That was the thing I loved most about it, was we were in it for 10 days. There was no going and hiding in your hotel room, which was quite intense for a lot of people. It was intense for me, but part of what I really enjoyed about it was being on site all the time. And if I wanted to walk around that cabin in the middle of the night, which we were doing anyway because we were filming in the middle of the night, but if I wanted to walk around locations at any point, I could do that. They were right there.
Run that lamp up into the cabin, please.
I think we've had some really good bits, and it's been bad with the weather. It got rained off, and everyone's spirits have been kind of dipping. But it's sunny today, and it's going really well, and everyone's pulled together, and it's been fun, even though we've had a lot of issues and a lot of problems, and there's been setbacks and things falling through. Yeah, it's been good.
I think the biggest, not problem, the biggest surprise was location. You think like, yeah, you could film in a house, you could film in a hotel, you could film in a building. Actually filming outside was probably the biggest shock to the system of how you control things and how you do things, because you can have everything set up and have all the different pieces together, but it's suddenly having to apply those pieces to the location that they're going to be, and it was really difficult, because like you suddenly realise that you're having to have like different sections of like, this is a bit where people are going to live, this is a bit where people are going to shoot, this is where different locations are going to be, and then obviously this is in the absolute wilderness of Loch Winnock. So suddenly you like factors that you don't realise, that you'll know it if you go out in the middle of the woods. Suddenly when the sun goes down, you can't see shit. So every single night we had breaking little glow sticks leading different paths for where like one scene would be, where the toilets would be, where the van would be, where the cabin would be. And these little intricate things are the things that I think you don't know until you're actually on set doing stuff. I mean, we had absolutely no planning for that. It was being on set, doing it yourself, you had to come up with.
We had a really great bunch of people on the shoot. You could tell a lot of favours were being called in as we were going. A lot of things went wrong. But one of my funniest memories was we were camping. The joys of Hollywood. No trailers in this movie. It was we were camping while we were filming, and I remember waking up. And I felt like something on my face, like something on my head, and I realised that my tent had caved in halfway through. So it was just because of the rain, it was like literally a puddle of tent that was on my face, and I was like, why am I here? What am I doing? And that was probably the lowest part of it, I suppose. Getting stuck in the mud with the car. There was loads of different problems.
Tension oozing from every pore, really.
It's getting nervous. We just need to watch yourself on the crack of the door, just to make sure. And we'll see how it goes. I mean, one take McClure. Could be, may not be. See what happens. See if everyone else cooperates. And I say, look, let's do it one take McClure. See what happens. But
so I can get kind of hyper-focused on things and just like, I'm dedicated to this project, I'm going to make it happen. And you kind of forget or don't realise that not everybody has that same hyper-focus, and that there are obstacles in your way. So to me, I'm looking at it and going, right, a normal film shooting day is 12 hours, but we have a small sort of block of 10 days to shoot. And we have to shoot night and day. So if we shoot 6 hours in the day, have a break for sleeping and shoot 6 hours at night, that's fine. It's not, obviously. And you don't realise that till you get up there. So we started out well thinking, right, we've got this sort of mini crew or huge crew up there. But then, obviously, people get tired and people get a bit fatigued and stuff like that. And we end up shutting down, I think, for one day, just let people go home and have a shower and kind of asleep and reset. But it was difficult that first 10 days, but actually that was probably the easiest or most enjoyable part of it looking back, because once you start getting into, right, well, we're going to shoot this weekend, or we're going to shoot 3 or 4 days here and there, getting people back into that frame of mind, getting people motivated again is the hardest part.
obviously, you know, we'd only planned for 10 days of shooting there, and you finish and you go, well, there's definitely going to be some pickups, and we know we're missing these scenes, so we're going to have to come back. But we've all got jobs to go back to because we're all poor filmmakers. And so the challenge was coming back for you know, finding the time to come back for extra little bits. And poor Sean, the director, and who was doing the initial edit, he was seeing problems, and absolutely problems, because a low budget film doesn't come without problems. There's high budget problems which you can kind of work around sometimes because you want to get it perfect, and then there's problems like the bench had where you're like, we're missing an entire scene here. So that was a real challenge to keep coming back. There was a really nice camaraderie for a lot of us on that set, and there were kind of people floating in, and there were people who were kind of on shift and people who were off shift, and Sean's brother Stephen, who is the chef, he was just like, he became a bit of a go-to person because he was always like in the sort of like in the kitchen area, and it was just kind of, he had a caravan basically that he was doing some cooking out of, and it just became this really nice buzz for the most part. But what you also end up with that is, because it's so intense, because you're doing day shifts and then a short break and then night shifts and then a short break, you get really tired. So I mean, everybody gets tired on film shoots. This was a case of like Sean and I and one or two others were on it like crazy hours for the whole thing. There were cast who'd get a night off or a day off or whatever, but we were on it the whole time. So I remember it starting to disappear into a little bit of a haze at one point where you're going, okay, hold on a second, we're waking up in the morning going, script, okay, there's the shots, okay, let's just go. and trying to make it work.
I think what kept me going was the fact that I've always been an actor. I've always done plays. I've always acted in school and everything, and I had just graduated drama school, so I was trying to get work as an actor, trying to get more screen time, trying to get more plays and everything, and it's one of like obviously the hardest professions in the world, but it's my job, and it was always going to be my job, and I've been very lucky to continue to do that. But during filming, I realised the kind of gravitas of, like, you know, I was in a movie. It wasn't just about me. It was about everyone else, and if I just walked off, like, and the movie's done, like, I mean, they're going to have to try and get an actor to replace it, having shot, you know, a week already or 2 weeks or whatever it was. Like, one, that's really selfish, like, and I just couldn't live with myself if I was going to do that. Like, and I also believe in like finishing a product right through in a film, like in a script right through, because it's somebody else's words and somebody else's vision, and I've been hired to give my interpretation of that character, and I couldn't just give up. Like, it's not in my nature just to abandon it. And even if I was disheartened by it, like, I was, as I said, it's, you know, whatever happens to the movie afterwards, it's out with my control. But while I'm there, like, it's always been in my nature to finish it and keep going, and it's always going to be hard, and there always is hard jobs. You could have the easiest job sometimes, and then you work with really difficult people or really amazing people, so you kind of just have to make your way through a set and do your best.
Little do they know, I'm still alive.
We originally had 2 editors. I can't remember why we'd chosen 2, but for whatever reason we had 2 editors, and we were going to kind of give them the footage as we were filming, and they were going to edit it. It's that long ago, I can't even remember why that didn't happen, but I think it was something to do with another project or whatever that came up that they were doing, and things just kind of got a bit left behind. And so it ended up sitting because no one else was available to edit it for a while. And eventually I was able to get a laptop or a new computer powerful enough that I felt could edit it. But then I had to get the footage, because some of the footage was with Mike the DP, some of the footage was the previous editors, and you're trying to gather that all together and digitise it and get it ready, and then finally get sort of the first proper look. And I started putting that together, and I was impressed at first. I was kind of like, oh, you know, some of this stuff's really good, but then there was other things that maybe we only had 1 or 2 crew members and it wasn't as good, so you're thinking, right, well, we need to go out and do that, and we need to shoot this and shoot that. And there's bits we never got in the first place that just kind of fell by the wayside, or we didn't have the effects for, or the location for. So it was about then, right, having to rally everybody and be like, you know, can we go out and shoot this again? But by then, some actors had stopped acting, or they'd moved country, or a lot of the crew were really good at what they were doing, so they'd now got paid jobs and didn't want to come back and finish this off. So it was kind of about getting that done, and that took a few years because, as I said, you would get everything ready, you'd raise the money to go and do it, and then something would happen, somebody would pull out, or the weather would come out of nowhere and destroy the place, or the location would fall through, and you're now having to wait a few more months because you've spent the money. You know, just because you can't shoot doesn't mean you don't have to pay for the kit or the van hire or whatever. And you need to get that together again and get people's availability, because that's one of the things with a cast of 6. You have to get them all back together. If they're all in the scene, you have to get them all together at the same time. So that took a long time, and then when it was finally at a stage where I was like, do you know what, there's nothing more we can do, we've got everything we need, you're now having to, you know, get it colour graded and get a score done for it and get it sound mixed. And again, we want to use people who know what they're doing and are good at what they do, and these people have jobs and they get paid well. So you're waiting on them doing it in their spare time, you're waiting on them doing it wherever they can, and you don't want to rush these guys because you want them to do a good job as well. So that process alone took like 2 or 3 years just getting all that done.
The pickups are probably the hardest part, because again, it was once you're done with the initial shoot on a project and it's ultra low budget, trying to motivate people to come back and do a bit of that film it's like herding cats. It's like an absolute nightmare, because people don't have, and this is not a problem with people, there's no fault. Everybody was like that, even myself. You get to a point where you're like, oh, am I going back to the bench again? You're like, oh, right, okay, right, all right, okay. But obviously we covered so many different issues that we had with the film. We needed to do these reshoots, we had to go back and do them. And like I said, it's like when you turn up and you've got your makeup artist, you've got your actors, and you get to the cabin and it's cold, it's freezing, it's miserable, and you're like, right, we're going to get these scenes. And I can remember that one time when we were like, right, I can't wait, right, this is literally all we've kind of got left to do. This is like, this actor's going to be wrapped after it. You've got, that's going to be done, we're closing another part of it, this is going to be absolutely amazing. And I can remember the night when I'd stood at the cabin door and opened the cabin door, and it was like Christmas.
The interesting thing about the bench was it was a long, hard road, and we worked really hard on it. I worked really hard on it, and even I got to the point where traveling, you know, for several hours down from the Highlands just to shoot an hour or two scene was kind of hard for me to find the enthusiasm to do.
I think I'd ran out of energy probably for the project, we'd run out of money, and you know, we didn't go into it not having any idea what to do afterwards, but like I had researched like the American film market, sales agents. I'd spoken to every filmmaker who'd in Scotland or beyond who'd ever had a film of that size made and distributed. I spoke to them and asked them, you know, about the process and how they did it, but I don't know if it was just because we were going through like a second recession at the time, or maybe because streaming hadn't kind of taken off. It was pretty bleak. Like everyone was just kind of like, you're not going to make anything from this. Like the best you can hope is that somehow someone sees it who's going to help you make your next film, but like there's no audience that's going to, you're not going to get a giant audience, you're not going to get a lot of money. And that wasn't just for the bench, that was for, you know, their experience with their films as well. And I just thought, what's the point in putting it out when that's going to happen? So I think I just kind of didn't know I didn't feel that there was any viable options of what to do with it at the time. So I let it sit there thinking, right, well, we'll just need to wait and see. And then Ryan Hendrick came along a few years ago and said, you know, do you still have that film? What's happening with it? And he had been studying the American market and seen other people selling films like this and had an idea of what to do with it. And asked if we, you know, could let him remaster it and see if there was something that could be done.
When I was little, my grandmother used to tell me stories about a family who lived here, and a boy called Chester Oakes. He wasn't quite right. An amateur butcher, and he used to hunt the deer and the boar and then cut them up in his workshop. And every now and then, campers go missing up here. And people say that it's Chester, picking them off to cut up in his workshop.
I had been looking back over some of my earlier films. I had made a film about the same time the bench got made called Minds of Glass, which also had some of the same cast and crew. And what I'd noticed from films from myself and my peers, you know, Sean and other people that were making films about that time, that we were very new out of the gate and a lot of ideas, didn't really know how to completely convey them. And that was very apparent in the post-production process. And I thought it would be interesting to take these old films and redo the post-production from scratch with technology and the skill set that we possess now. And as I was looking to do this with one of my own films, I remembered The Bench. I had seen it when they were testing it, in 2010, 2011, whenever it was. And I wondered, whatever happened to that? It kind of just disappeared. So I kind of called Sean up and said, right, what did you do with The Bench? Was it ever released? Anything ever happened with it? He goes, no, nothing ever happened. I went, okay, I've got an idea.
So when Sean and I started chatting about The Bench, in terms of the style of it and what we wanted to do, obviously you always hope for more money than you actually end up getting. But as we were kind of still in those hopeful days, still am in the hopeful days, as we were prepping for it, Sean gave me this stack of DVDs, and then he's like, Mike, have you seen Halloween? And I'm like, nope. Have you seen Friday the 13th? Nope. Old school slasher stuff. It was like that thing of, right, okay, we're going back here. Some of this really needs to be simplified and played with, but we've got the opportunity here to turn it up where we need to, and really mess with the style. So what ended up happening was you get onto the shoot, and it is a low-budget shoot, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So you have to start working with low light, which really messes with the quality of your image. And what that's ended up doing is, because you're working around image that's not quite as good quality as you'd like it to be, you start to have to compromise with it. I think the wonderful thing about the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the fact that there's nothing perfect about that film. The tracking shots aren't smooth. They're dirty, it's gritty, it's grainy. And I think that's what's really lent itself. It's actually all the faults of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is part of what makes it terrifying. So it's almost all the faults of The Bench that kind of have worked in our favor. And now we've, of course, like Ryan taking on the post and that has really lent into that sort of style, taking that old school sort of HDV plan. We'd planned on shooting on one camera. I said, let's shoot on the HDV camera, which may or may not have been the right choice, because for me, I was looking at resolution at the time. I've learned more since, and would I make a different decision now? Probably. Well, I make very different decisions now, but with the same cameras, I don't know if I'd make the same decisions. But it's worked out in its favor.
Something you're too close to something and can't see. Like there were certain scenes that there was continuity errors or problems that I was like, we can't lose it, so it's just going to have to stay there. But Ryan was able to see, well, actually, you can lose that, and it's more distracting to have it in there than it is to just jump from that scene to the next.
Then you have to go.
Ultimately, this isn't my film. I wasn't there. I wasn't part of the filming in any way. So I wasn't that close to it. So I was able to be a lot more surgical about the process, and I would basically honour the tone and the pace. And any time that I felt that was being interrupted or slowed down, I would stop and analyse why is that, and I would trim or I would move scenes around and that kind of thing. And it was just maybe one too many explanations or convoluted additions to the subplot that would further give more insight to the goings on. And with the kind of tone and the kind of film this is, being that sort of old B-movie kind of slasher, we don't need it. And it was like, do we care? No, move on. The original grade of The Bench was a bit all over the place. And something all filmmakers at the time starting out on mini DV and whatnot are guilty of just pushing it too far, pushing it the wrong way. and just not understanding how to pull the best out of the colour. And when you look at the format of HDV, there's an incredible amount of detail and colour in the footage. So the first thing to do was to take the original footage and upscale it to 4K and denoise it and remove any kind of compression, any kind of artifacts. And from that, Jakob was able to edit a completely clean image and effectively re-add the imperfections digitally. So we're adding grain, we're kind of pushing getting the most out of the colour and just giving it a warm sort of appeasing kind of look, because it is full of colour and there's a lot of blue and there's a lot of red in the film, and it's just kind of balancing that to make it feel like a film that was shot on like 60mm film.
And so that kind of inspired me a bit more when I seen it to go, right, okay, this is actually, you know, better than what it was before, and I think this could be something, and we could do something with it. And then annoyingly I started to get ideas about what I wanted to do with it and get involved again, and started to get like excited about doing something again and get some energy for it.
When it comes to an old, low-budget film like this, the sound becomes so important, and lots of work had to be done to kind of get that up to scratch, and that wasn't there before. I don't really think a mix had really taken place on the old version of The Bench, and that was something I was very keen to completely change.
It was a bit of a flashback to how we as indie film people in Scotland used to do it, because there's no like radio mics, there's no like time code, any fancy stuff like that. It's literally just a person with a boom, just recording the best they can, which it was actually quite nice to go back to that, because that's how I started, and it was quite nice to go back and work to make that work in a kind of modern context. And obviously the tools have gotten a lot better, like noise reduction and isotopes, my personal favourite, and all that stuff. That combined with the fact that we have a lot more years of experience doing this, we could do a better job with it than we probably would have done back in the day. For horror, sound design is very important, especially low budget horror, because you don't have the money to show every gory detail sometimes, or sometimes the gory details are a bit gory, but the good thing about sound is that it's cheap and it's a theatre of the mind sort of situation where you can sort of implant that kind of fear in the people using just the sound. I think the key for just gore in general is to have lots of different layers kind of addressing different points. For the drill in the eye, for example, there's probably about 10 different sounds all going at once there. Like you have like the hum of the drill, you've got just general wet goriness. I think there's a bit of kind of mechanical sort of worrying like twistiness in there to kind of give the sense that our eye's getting mashed up, which is fun. So I would say layers is the key. Yeah, everything's exaggerated in films. Like if you just take a single sound, it really does the job.
The sound, like I must have sat and watched the film God knows how many times by that point, editing it myself and doing different things with it. You kind of become numb to it, but when I'm sitting watching it and the sound that he's put in over some of the death scenes and different things, it made me feel uncomfortable. I'm sitting like crossing my legs in the seat. So that was good. That's when I really thought, whoa, this is impressive.
Saved my life. When I was younger, I almost drowned in a school swimming pool. And Steve jumped in and saved me.
I saw an edit of the film back in 2013 and I thought it was actually okay and it held together, but I knew it was an early draft. But you don't watch it and you're that close and you know the hard times you've had and you know some of the potential upsets that have happened in that process. I thought the film looked so much better than it looked. I was impressed with some of the choices that we made at the time, both in terms of like shooting style and places and scenes that I'd completely forgotten about. And then of course the post-process as well that Ryan's done, just to really pull that HDV out of the dirt that it was in.
I remember like maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, like thinking like I wonder like I wonder where that film is, or will anyone ever see it or something. And now we're coming to a point where like there's an actual finished product, and it does feel like it's quite there's quite a romantic element to it, which is like, you know, you sort of, it's like kind of a long lost love. It's come back, and watching the film, I was honestly so impressed with how it was all put together and the finished product. And I thought, wow, it didn't feel like we filmed that back 16 years ago. It doesn't feel like we shot all those scenes and did all that. I think just because towards the end of the filming, people were getting like quite upset and like disheartened by the whole process. I'm honestly like amazed with what everyone has done with this film. So hats off to everybody.
We had a screening, which I was probably incredibly nervous about, because I just did not know how an audience was going to react to this film. I knew how I felt about it. I knew I'd seen it. We'd seen it tested in the big screen and stuff. But I didn't know how an audience was going to react. And I think it went really well. People seemed to really connect with the sort of like 70s, the nostalgia of it, the vibe of the sort of 70s indie slasher, but also the nostalgia of it being in 2007. Like, if we just brought it out then, it would just have been a film made in 2007, but now it looks like a film set in 2007, almost giving us a production value that we didn't mean to have. And some of the lines which would never have really meant to be funny before are now funny.
Your phone won't work.
Of course it'll work, and it's a £300 phone.
Obviously, people are not going to walk up to you and say that was terrible to your face, but most people seem to really enjoy the film, genuinely really enjoy it, and that was really, really nice. That was a good feeling to, like, after all those years, to get a good reaction and to not be like chased out of the cinema was fun.
I came out absolutely buzzing, and I knew before the screening, we'll know how that screening goes down by the buzz and the number of people having drinks together afterwards. And you also gauge how well something's gone and how good something is by people's reaction to it. And the buzz after the screening was really, really positive. So not only did I come out going, I think that was all right, but I came out to this really positive group of people going, yeah, we did great. Actually, that was fun. So I'm really chuffed with how it's come out.
When I was watching it, I was smiling all the way through, because there was like the cringy moments, but then also like I was quite proud of like how far I'd come, but also like putting myself in that position to, I was in a leading role in a Scottish horror film, and it could have went somewhere back then if it was completed, but that's remains to be seen. Like, that's impossible to know. So I think this is a journey that the film had to take in order for it to be completed in the way it was. So so it was very, very nice to see a finished product, and I was actually like super impressed with everyone, and it was nice to see some old faces, and I definitely would have made some different choices with how I would approach the character if I was reading the script now.
Getting to see it finally with remastered and all the help of Ryan and Magic Monkey, like once you actually get to see that project and you know that it's done, that's it complete, or you know when there's no going back, it's got its final seal done and it's out there, it's amazing. It's honestly amazing. You genuinely get such a buzz from doing it, and like it's so much of a buzz that we're just like, right, what's next? You're just kind of champion. Like, I've not done acting for so long, and I'm like, right, well, I want to do something now. I want to get myself back in. I want to help make another film. I want to get back into acting. I want to do the kind of stuff that we've done previously. It's just such a happy feeling that you get from seeing your production be out there, but also look so good, I think is the big key part. It just looked great.
Another thing is how valuable films like this are to people who don't, like, for example, live in London or Hollywood or whatever. It's like, because we don't always have the big productions that we can just get onto. So many filmmakers, especially in Glasgow and Scotland, this is how they started. And I think these films are important because a lot of people cut their teeth in this sort of stuff, and obviously they have the problems, they're not perfect, but many people you meet during these projects are still working in the industry today. So I think people shouldn't underestimate how important they are as an educational tool, especially when sometimes the education isn't available for those people. I wouldn't have a job if it wasn't for films like this.